Hey guys, Ryan here with another video, and today is going to be a pretty special video actually. It's going to be from one of my actual games that I played in a pretty strong tournament recently, and I'm going to provide some commentary on it. But before we begin, I'm kind of sorry for the lack of videos. It's just that my schedule, I didn't have time to, so I'm trying to post some good quality videos out for you guys. And shout out to Greg, Shahada. All my subscribers and views I have now is because of him, so thank you so much. I appreciate your help and advertisement. But basically today is going to be a game where I was black and I was playing an international master, Vladimir Mezentsev. His rating is 24-23 USCF and like 23-40-ish FIDE. So I was going up against a pretty tough IM. Now, I'm not going to spoil anything for you because I think this is a pretty interesting game and you shouldn't know the result until the game is over. But once the game starts heading toward its last points, then you'll know what the score is going to be. All I'm going to say is that it's not a draw. Okay, that's your hint. But anyways, let's get going. So he plays e4, which is of course a common opening. I reply with e5. So I'm not playing Sicilian, I'm not playing French, I'm just playing the normal e5 line. So knight f3, attacking the pawn, knight c6, and now bishop b5. So now he's basically playing the Ruy Lopez, in which there are many structures he can go into, namely d6, knight e7, and those kind of stuff. I think those are the main moves, along with bishop e7 and knight f6. But my line is basically a6. And now here the most common variation is bishop a4, but instead of bishop a4, he plays slightly more rare one, which is bishop takes c6. So the point of bishop takes c6 is to have my pawn structure weakened, but in return I get the two bishops, as you can see here and here. But he basically gets my pawn structure ruined, and most lines goes into the endgame and tries to either put pressure on it in the middle game without going into the endgame, or going into the endgame and having a bad pawn structure. So castles, f6 is one of the main moves in this position. And basically the point is to just defend the f-pawn, which is a very strong defender, because if I defend with anything else, although these are lines like bishop d6, he doesn't need to play the continuation of d4, although he can play d3. And although I can play f6 later, I wouldn't want my bishop on d6 to just protect this pawn, while I can play f6 and maybe g5, bishop c5. So that's basically the reason for f6. There are no knight takes e5 tricks here, just saying, because of just king d7 or king e7 takes and bishop e6, and I'm just up a piece. So basically, well, I actually think king d7 is better there. But anyways, so no knight takes e5, but d4. So this is the most popular line, I believe, but it's not played by the top players very often because it is a pretty drawish line, and in the top player league, black kind of wants a draw whenever he's black, because white is kind of superior because he can kind of dictate what opening to play, but Anyways, so basically I have one option other than bishop g4, which is take, knight takes, and c5. So now here it's pretty apparent that we are going into the endgame. Here the most common line is actually knight b3, which he does not do. Knight b3 is basically to kind of stop knight e7 in the future because of the b pawn, but I can play c4 later on and it will help. But anyways, he plays knight e2, and then I trade into this endgame and play bishop d7. So the first look at this endgame, it might seem like pretty drawish, but actually there are many different components which can make it pretty interesting. First of all, I have two doubled pawns on the c file, but in return for that, as I said, I do have the two bishops, and if I open the position up, they can be deadly. Also, the d file is open for anyone to take. Usually it's white who takes it, and his position doesn't really have any weaknesses, and mine kind of does with my pawns, but other than that, the position should be solid. So bishop f4 attacking c7. I just castle because that's why I played bishop d7, and now my rook is on the d8 d file, and it's putting pressure on there. So now knight c3. So basically the point of knight c3 is to play knight d5 and attack on c7. So basically if I did nothing here, knight d5 would be the best continuation. c6, knight b6, mate. You wouldn't want to go for that. That would be funny actually. But there's only one other way to protect this c-pawn, and it's to play bishop d6. But after bishop d6, knight b6 check basically is better for white. Take, and rook takes d6. Another continuation is to leave black with a backwards pawn and go here, and it's completely crushing for white, as you can see from the position. So I wouldn't want to do that, so instead I play knight e7 to guard the d5 square, and now bishop g3. So the point of bishop g3 is to play knight f4 to d5, and sometimes f4 and e5. Now, I didn't want to play g5 here because I thought that f4 would take advantage of my weaknesses of g5, and I just didn't like the position after it, after h6 and possibly f5 here. And I think that white should be slightly better in this position, and he has more prospects. My light squares are very weak, so I wouldn't want to do that. So instead I played bishop e6, and here's my idea. So knight f4, bishop f7. So now he just takes and goes back. He takes on d8, basically best move, take. And so now he just gains control of the d file, but to me it doesn't really matter. So basically, you can say he has a slight edge, but I have the two bishops, so I think the position should be around equal. And the reason for this maneuver, e6 to f7, is because my bishop now has this little pocket, and it can access d5, as we'll see right now. So knight f to d5. I think knight c to d5 was slightly stronger because of his prospects of getting his knight to e6 if he chooses to go to this continuation. Although I still think the position is equal though. But he plays knight f d5 anyway. And now here You can pause the video and see which piece you would take it with, either the bishop or the knight. So pause the video and think about that, because I think I played the best move in this situation. And I want to see what you guys think about it. So pause the video and think of what you are going to do. So for those of you who already seen it, basically I played knight takes d5 in this position because of, if bishop takes d5, I think that after e takes d5, my position is slightly worse based on the fact that I don't have the two bishops, and my knight and my pieces are kind of feeling backwards. So if you don't know what I mean maybe like knight f5 here can be followed up by knight to e4. And basically in this position, you see that it's hard for my bishop to move out, maybe bishop e7. But he has a grip over the position, and I just didn't like it. Like probably f3 and then rook e1, and my pieces are kind of tangled up here, and I just didn't like it. So, but if you thought bishop takes d5 was better, why don't you put down in the comment section below what would be your argument for that, and I'll take a look to see which move was best. So yeah, just do that if you want, if you feel rebellious, and not really, but if you think that bishop takes d5 was the best choice. But anyways, knight takes d5, and now knight takes, because of pawn takes. I have the two bishops, which enables me to play like bishop g3, bishop g6, sorry, and king d7 and bishop d6, and my position would be slightly better in this case, I think. So knight takes d5, attacking c7, basically one choice. Bishop takes, because again, if bishop d6, knight b6 check, and I basically lose a pawn on b6. I don't lose it, but after b5, he has a strong initiative, and I didn't like that. And also, once again, he can leave me with backwards pawn, and why would I want to play this when I can play something even better, right? So I just trade him, and bishop e7. So now I'm developing. Here is the part where it gets kind of interesting, and I'll show you my calculations in these positions to see what I was going through and why I played moves and so on and so forth. So c4, making an outpost for his rook, c6, kicking it out, rook d3, and now bishop d8. So bishop d8 might seem like a pretty weird move. Well, I'll show you my other options. So basically you might think rook d8 here. Well, my problem with rook d8 was that after rook takes d8 and king takes d8, I guess, he can play f4, sorry. And what he's planning to do is actually play f5. So if I play king d7 and f5, I think I'm actually worse in this position, because first of all, I cannot do anything on the queen side with my majority because of my doubled pawns. I don't have many places to go. I cannot trade my bishops, because if I do, then his queenside majority will crush me, like here. And his queenside majority is much better, his kingside majority, sorry, is better than my queenside majority. So in this case, I think that he has an advantage and he would be able to win the game. And so basically after this, let's say I try to play g6 and get out of it, he just moves his king up. Let's just say I make some normal moves. He moves his king up and then basically tries to make his majority on the king side and push his pawns from there. And once he simplifies the position into having only his f pawn against all these other pawns on the queen side, he would be able to win the game. So like maybe a4, h3, and I really can't do anything. b5, I'm just trading as many pawns as I can because this would be worse for me, but I can't do anything. Take, go back, and now he can, if he wants, he can basically bring his king over. And once he does, he has ideas of g5. These might not be the exact moves, and I might not be playing it the best way, but basically the idea is that he's gonna have a passed pawn that I kind of just can't stop. And once I try to, his king is just gonna go this way, and I'm basically in zugzwang because if you go there, I just go back and there are not many things to do because bishop h6 and bishop d6, f7, f8 queen, and once the king goes back, then just king b6 and it should be winning. So I might not have played it the best way, but this is just a showcase of how hard it is for black to play when white has that king side majority and black cannot do anything on the queen side. So basically, that's why I did not want to trade rooks. Another thought was g6 here, so that f4, f5, but I didn't like that either after think take. And although I have a bishop on d4 post, my pieces are too passive and I didn't like this position. He also can control the e-file, so I didn't like that. So instead I played bishop d8. And my point was that I wanted to have a rook endgame where I could put pressure on his e4 pawn and try to move my king around to his queen side so I can get my majority moving there. So f3, strengthening his pawn structure, bishop c7, and king f2. If he didn't play that, then I would have played b6, and he cannot move his f-pawn after rook e8, and I would be applying some pretty good pressure. So I played king f2 relatively quickly, so I traded and played king c7. So now it's basically a race to see who can have the faster attacks for their sides, pawn majorities. So king f4, rook e8, so king f5, rook e5 check. g4, advancing his pawns, b5, advancing mine. Rook e5 now. So this move took me a pretty long time to find because or else I didn't have anything to stop h4, g5. And whenever I try to move around here, rook d7 and a3. So rook e5, h4, h5 was my idea. Although I think h5 is a slight inaccuracy. h6, according to the computer, would have been a better variation. But in my opinion, I thought that after moves like h5, I can't move my rook from e5 or else king f5 to g6, and my pawns would be on pressure, and I can't make any movements with my king because of, as I said, rook d7. So I didn't like that, but apparently the computer liked it. So I played h5 and g5. So now here the calculation process began, and I'd seen all of this. So b4, rook d2, threatening rook g2 to g6, and putting pressure on my pawns. a5, pushing my pawns, and rook g2. So trying to put pressure on my pawns, and a4. So after rook g6, I take, and now he can't take on f6, because I just take on a2, and I completely winning. And the reason he didn't take was that now I can move my king, and the king a5 to a2 maneuver is pretty deadly for him because my b pawn is just going to be a monster. So take, rook e6. This was all part of the calculation, and now after king f5, rook d3. So this endgame is actually pretty interesting, and only one move in the middle part of this endgame saved him, and it led to him having an advantage. So normal moves, f4, getting his pawns moving, rook d3, rook g7 check, and king takes f6. So now the real pawn storm begins. Rook takes b3, e5, rook c3 check, rook c3. The b pawn is not enough for me to try to win because his two pawns in the center would be easily beat me once he plays rook g1, and I kind of needed those c pawns to roll fast. So e6, rook takes c4, and f5. So you might be wondering why not e7, right? Well, e7 leads to me actually winning because now rook e4, I can also take on f4, but rook e4 is simpler. Rook g8, and now c4. This is the killer move because if he promotes to a queen, my pawns are just unstoppable, and they're going to push to a queen. I did c4 because now I need an outlet for king c5, and it's just winning for me. And that's basically the only move he had other than the game continuation f5. So rook e4 and rook g1, basically trying to stop my pawns. And now after c4, I thought I had winning chances. But after his next move, yeah, all of that kind of vanished. So why don't you pause your video here once again and see what you can do here, because I'm pretty sure that this is the undisputed best move for white. So just pause your video and see what you can do. I actually showed some of my friends who are like 22, 2300s, and they took a bit of time to find this move, so try to sit down a bit, analyze the position, and see what you can do. So also, if you have any other moves, put it in the comments. But anyways, pause your video here and see what move you think is the best. So for you who have already figured out, it's this deadly move, king e7, which just gets his pawns rolling way too fast for me. If e7, then I think c3 here, king f7, c2, and after queen, take, just b3, f6, and b2. And this position, for me, I think is just completely winning, I'm pretty sure. I can then try to push my pawn. I'll check him, and I can take. I'll check him, and then I can take the h4 pawn. And with correct play, I should be able to win the game. So that won't work. So king e7 is just a monster move. And now basically all the next moves are forced. c3, rook c1, not allowing b3, king c5, f6, rook f4, f7. Now I need to protect my c pawn in order to get my b pawn rolling, so king c4, f8 queen, rook takes, and b3. But here he's just completely winning after e7, b2, and rook e1. So now the rest of the game is pretty trivial, and all those moves were forced. e8 queen, b1 queen. If I played c1 queen, queen takes c6. Now he had an easy win with just taking and take. But instead he wanted to go for mate, so he took, and I resigned. Yeah, I'm just gonna lose after this battery thing with rook d2, and this would be mate. So yeah, it was a pretty nice game by me and him. I had a few chances, but since I'm like 200 rating points lower than him, I think I did pretty well. Just a quick breeze through the game. Drawish opening, not very frequent and high level because of its drawish nature. And basically one of the quiz questions after which piece would you take it with? Again, knight takes d5 was the correct answer. Yeah, and then basically my thought process on why rook d8 was worse. And yeah, so basically it was the pawn chase, and tried to defend, but I couldn't. And it was pretty close at the end, but just didn't work out for me. And yeah, so that will be the end of this commentary for my first real game against a good player, and I'll post more of these if you want me to. Just put in the comments. Another shout out to Greg Shahad for advertising my channel on Reddit and making me have a lot of subscribers and viewers. So thanks for that. And shout out to my friend Cameron Wheeler for drawing a GM in that tournament. That was pretty awesome. He's actually a really good player, so yeah. He's actually only like 1 or 2 years older than me, so, and he drew a GM, so he's pretty beast. But anyways, yeah, those are the shout outs. I hope you enjoyed this game. And yeah, so sorry for the lack of uploads, but my schedule has been pretty busy. And yeah, so until next time, this has been Ryan. I hope you enjoyed this commentary, and yeah, so see ya.